I'm Queen V.
And I'm Dr. E. Queen V, I'd like to welcome everyone to our new podcast, Audacity to Believe. And I believe that we have something really incredible for our listening and viewing audience. And that is we're going to explore women in aviation. And we're going to look at the historical aspects of women in aviation. Now, let me say this before we get started, is that I'm sure most people have heard of Amelia Earhart. I have. I've heard many, many wonderful stories about her and how wonderful she has been in terms of giving women a place in history. But there's some women that came before her. Let's talk a little bit about Amelia Earhart, and then let's jump into those audacious women who came before her. Go for it.
Absolutely, Dr. E. And we know that Amelia Earhart is wildly revered, and, honestly, righteously so, right? Because she was the first woman to ever complete a solo transatlantic flight. And for that, she received the United States Distinguished Flying Cross. And that is a huge accomplishment that she received in 1935. But can I tell you, Dr. E, I never knew of the phenomenal African-American / Native American, because she was both, Bessie Coleman, who received her pilot's license in June of 1921, long before Amelia Earhart did the transatlantic flight. But what is so significant, even more so to me about that, is that Bessie Coleman did it under the scourge of racism, where she was denied admission to every flight school she applied to in the United States, ended up going to France. And in France, she took her flying lessons and received her licensure as a female pilot in 1921.
Wow, Queen V, that is amazing. It's amazing that she had something intrinsic within her to be able to say, you know what, let me keep going from place to place. And everyone kept denying her because of systemic racism, denied her the right to do what she had in her heart to do. But I am amazed that she had the vision to be able to go leave this country, go to another country to realize her dream. And it's my understanding that it was her brother that was responsible for getting her to think down another path. Can you talk about that, please?
Absolutely. Well, Dr. E, as we know, back in that era before social media being the big hype it is now, and constant 24/7 television, families would get together at the dinner table and they would talk about their traveling exploits, their time in the military. It was very unusual for African Americans to be able to travel as widely as the servicemen. So her brothers would come home and they would talk about their exploits in France, about, France has always had a more liberal identity as far as race is concerned. And so they didn't have the same racism and racial constraints that America did. And the brothers would brag to her about the women in France that were already flying planes. And she was mesmerized by that so much that she developed a vision that, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. And I'm going all out. I'm going to be as audacious as I have to be and go wherever I have to go to obtain my dream.
Well, I find that very interesting. It's because if you have something just literally deep into your soul, deep in your heart, where you want to be a particular person, or you want to be able to realize your dreams, etc. I find it interesting how she was able to overcome racism on two different fronts, being Black as well as Native Americans. So that is a huge issue that she was able to overcome, and being a woman, and to have to leave the US to go someplace that would be more inviting, that would be more open to what she wanted. I just find that admirable. Now, here's something, Queen V. There's oftentimes people right now, if we're talking about we're in the COVID-19, where people are thinking about how they could transform their current positions or their lives so they can do something different. And these women and men and people of all nationalities are thinking in terms of, what can I do? What can I be? Let me be transformed and let me find my dreams. And a lot of people are going back to the same old grind. I admire those people to step out on faith and to believe. I cannot imagine what it must feel like to step out of your own country and to have to go to another country to realize your dreams, only to come back to the US. And as my understanding, she was still confronted with racism. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And she was so phenomenal at what she did that she was known as Queen Bess. She became a hit, not only in the United States, but in Europe, where, like I said, France didn't experience the same level of racism that we did. And she would do these shows and these tours, and she was known for doing the loop-the-loops. She would do all these aeronautical miraculous tricks. And she was known as Queen Bess of the air as well. But what I love about her story so much, Dr. E, is that she refused to capitulate to racism. Okay. If there was any type of segregation, she would not perform. I believe it was in the South somewhere. They had booked her to perform, but they had arranged it so there would be a white exit and a black exit. And she refused to perform. She was not about to allow people to suffer from the same indignities and opportunities that she was denied. And so she was a staunch advocate for civil rights, women's rights, and human rights. And I admire Bessie Coleman for that.
Well, I love the fact that she stood her grounds. But I tell you, it really excites me when I think about Bessie Coleman. It's like, not only did she get her aviation license and became a pilot, but she was able to do something other than flying from point A to point B or whatever. She's like, okay, you know what? I have all of this and some. I'm going to do tricks in the air. Wow, can you just imagine being told that, no, you can't get a license, all the way saying, you know what, I'm gonna get my license and I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna do some flips and some tricks and I'm gonna do all this fun stuff for me. And then yet maintain her dignity and respect, self-respect, by saying there's no way I'm going to stop doing the things that I need to do. I'm not going to get involved into any of these isms, racism, sexism, you name it. She said, I'm not gonna go there. So I really respect her for that. I'll tell you, Queen V, like this wonderful, audacious woman that would not give up her dreams or whatever, there's another pilot, another aviator that is also female, and she is a woman of color. I believe she is from Chinese. Let's talk about her.
Yes, absolutely. And you know what? You're right. I think that Bessie Coleman's ability to just not be denied is phenomenal. Now we have the first Asian American woman that would received her license, received it in the 1930s as well. I believe 1931. And she was Miss Cheung. And she became known as the first Asian American female to receive her pilot's license. Again, she changed careers. She was originally going to school to obtain a career in music, classical music, which seemed the preferred career as far as her family was concerned. That was proper for a proper cultured Asian American woman to do, and she flipped the script. In 1924, in fact, she got married, and shortly after that, decided, you know what? I'm not going to be a musician, a professional one. I'm going to be a pilot. And so actually, she was the first Asian American pilot ever licensed, and her name is Catherine Cheung.
Well, I find that amazing because sometimes we could get steeped into stereotyping different cultures, different races, but I can only imagine her parents, that probably insisted that she should go into the traditional, play the piano, make sure you be this wonderful pianist or this wonderful musician or whatever. And then for her to say, mom and dad, I want to be a pilot. I mean, that just seems incredible to me that not only she did that, but from the parent point of view, I wonder what they were probably thinking. But as my understanding, she had support from her family to be able
Absolutely.
to flip that script and to say, you can be anything you desire to be. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, this is an incredible fact, Dr. E, because we know that success doesn't come in a vacuum, that it leaves clues, that everybody needs somebody. We know Bessie Coleman had her brothers that spiked her interest in aviation. Catherine Cheung had her family member that was a pilot to assist her and train her. But they had also established, which is just incredible to me, an organization, an international organization called the 99s. And it was the 99 International Organization of Women Pilots. And it was established in 1929. And several, actually most of the pilots, the female pilots that we are highlighting today were members of this organization. But imagine, there were 99. We had no clue, but they supported each other, trained together, brought up others to be interested in aviation. And that is how we become bridge builders for others.
Well, I think that is really important. You hit on something that about the group 99. And if we tell our children or we tell ourselves that, yes, we can do anything we set our minds to. Yes, we can be anything we want to be. And then we have to block out all the negativity that the world tells us on a day-to-day basis that you cannot do this because of whatever. We cannot continue to listen to that negative tape recorder that we get into our minds looking at social media or the newspaper or just any of these variables that may tell us or remind us every day that we cannot. It's a matter of how do we surround ourselves with positive thinking people that can help us get to that next level.
Well, you know what, Dr. E, we live in the perfect age of no excuse. Now, you and I both recognize that there is systematic and systemic racism, ageism, classism, sexism, you name it. But nothing can rise higher than our desire to be who we want to be. I don't believe that God will allow anyone to have more control over our lives than we do. But this is the age that we can seek out encouragement. We don't have to have the perfect strata of friends. We can go on Facebook and find like-minded people. You can go to YouTube all day and get encouragement, advice, strategy, prayer, whatever it is that we need. It is readily available at our fingertips. It is frightening how easy it is to find the information that we desire. We just have to want it.
That's right. And sometimes we have to just turn off the switch because there, just like there's so much wonderful information out there, there's also the negativity that we hear and see on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes I'll tell you, I just turn it off, I flip it off, I turn off all social media, I'll turn off all I have three TVs in my house and there's always something playing or whatever, just shut it down and reboot. shut it down and restart, shut it down and rest. And sometimes we got to do that in order to just start getting into the deeper center of our souls so that we can refresh whatever it is we decide that we want to do. Because I'm sure these wonderful female pilots that came way back in the day where it was an anomaly to have women in aviation, I'm sure they were met with all sorts of negativity throughout their entire careers, but they kept going. They opened the doors for people like you and like me to have the audacity to believe that we can do anything that we set our minds to. Now that brings me to yet another audacious aviator. Who do we have?
We have so many audacious aviators, Dr. E. We have, of course, everybody knows about Amelia Earhart. We have covered Bessie Coleman. We covered Catherine Cheung. But we have many more amazing aviators that have never, ever been highlighted, that haven't been focused on, that we have never heard of, and of all stripes. And that's what I love about the club, the organization that they started. There was no racism in that organization. But we are going to talk about Harriet Quimby. Now, Harriet Quimby was born August 11th, 1911, and she became the first licensed female pilot in the United States, period. She was a licensed pilot years before Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart became so famous, and not this lady, regrettably, because Amelia Earhart did the solo transatlantic flight, which made her really famous. But this lady, Harriet Quimby, had the daring and adventurous side of her that put her name in history books for all time as being the first, the absolute number one licensed female pilot in the United States.
Well, Queen V, I find it interesting when you're the first, there's a big load that one carries when you're the first or maybe the only one. And reason why I say this, I was the first, I am the first Black female professor to teach in the College of Business in its over 97-year history. Now, let me repeat that. In over 97 years, I'm the first and I'm still the only. And I feel the burden of being the first. I feel the racism behind being the first. I feel the racism of still being the only one, because it's like, well, why am I still the only one? Why was it that I was the first? Why is it that I am the first? And so I feel the burden even now, and this is 2021, and I said, gee, it's a burden. It's a burden when I walk across campus knowing that I'm the only one and wondering, why is that? It's a burden. And so I can only imagine the burden that she felt as the first and only female licensed aviator, not only to get that license, but I can only imagine when people are getting on the plane and they see this woman pilot, and it's like, okay, I'm going to be the person transporting you. I can imagine what some of the passengers may have thought about, maybe what they have felt or whatever. Is because I think about being the first Black female professor for some of my students. And some of my students will always look at me and they say, wow, I've never had a Black female professor or a Black teacher in my life. Wow, they're always amazed. And so I wonder sometimes behind their amazement, what does that really mean? And so let's talk about that. Let's unpack that.
Well, I think anytime that you are the first at anything, you are taking hits that for other people. And I'm sure that in your, as a matter of fact, I know because you and I discussed it a lot, in your teaching career, that you took a lot of those hits so that you would prepare the path for others. Now, what do you think needs to happen in instances like this so that you don't remain the first and only? What type of strategies do you think have to be implemented so that the next generation are able to succeed?
Well, that's a good question. It's something that I'm working on as we speak. First of all, talk about it. It's important to talk about it to bring awareness to people so they can say, oh, it's not because you're so smart. Maybe it's something else. And so we have to address what that maybe something else might be. Finally, after almost 19 years, well, actually my 20th year at my current institution, I was able to get on recruitment committees. I was excluded all before then. For all those years, I couldn't get on the recruitment committees, but now I'm on the committee. And so we have two, I say two, and let me say this again, two blacks, two people of color, one black, and the other is another person of color, and it's a Mexican, were hired as a result of me being on that committee. So we have two people of color, and I'm talking about the underrepresented minorities. Why did it take over 20 years to get there? I was on that committee. That's a change. And so what we have to do, rather than complaining, we got to make a deliberate effort to get in there, roll up our sleeves, and do something about it, and not be afraid to talk about it. I'm talking about it candidly, talking about it openly, but the most important thing is never giving up and never quitting. It took me over 19 years to get on that committee. I never gave up. And that's one thing I will say for anyone that's in a position where you're the first or maybe the only. Yeah, you're going to take a bunch of blows and hits. But the number one thing is that maybe you're in that position because God put you there. I'm in the position at my school because God put me here. And because he knew that I would have the stick-to-itiveness to be able to take whatever blows or whatever. And then I come back doing what I was ordained, what I was called to do. I really believe that from the bottom of my heart, and I will continue to do what I'm doing. The other thing that I think people ought to consider, hey, mentor folks. I talk to a lot of students or just anyone that has a dream or a vision. Keep moving forward. Keep your eyes on the prize. Keep believing in yourself. Keep believing that what inspires you to wake up every single day. Hold on to that inspiration and don't let anyone take that from you. And finally, don't believe what the naysayers have to say. Anyone that's going to try to drag you down and tell you to do it their way or tell you, no, you can't do it. You got to avoid those people. You got to wipe them out of your mind and get them out of your space, and don't let them have any real estate in your head. You got to move those people sideways, get them out of the way, and be around positive thinking people. If you can do those small little things, you can keep going. And I'm sure these female pilots, these female aviators that got started in the industry, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with them, because I can tell you, I believe in my heart, what they experienced then is probably very similar to what we experience right now, all these decades later. It's troubling, but it also tells me that we still got a lot of work to do. We have to keep moving and keep praying and keep hope alive and keep believing in ourselves. So I think I told you probably more than what you've asked for, Queen V, but that's what I do to keep myself going as the first and only. Got to keep fighting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that those are such powerful points. And we have more to go and more to cover. And we have Jeannie Yeager, who was a Caucasian woman, much like Emily Earhart and others, Miss Quimby, and she was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1952, moved to California. She's a more current woman aviator, but it just goes to show you that we stand on the shoulders of others.
Yes.
None of us stand alone. As you know, I recently came back from being able to see land that my great grandmother purchased in Kentucky before I was ever born, because I never knew her, of course, my great grandmother. But we stand on the shoulders of others, and it is a continuum. None of us are starting it, and none of us will finish it. But like relay runners, we have to pass the baton on to those behind us. We accept the baton from those that have passed it to us. And at the same point with the 440 relay, which I used to run in high school, you have to keep one hand in front for reaching for the baton and one hand behind to pass the baton.
Right.
And so we always know that what we are doing, you know, our audaciousness is to impact others. It's not about us at all. It is really for those that we are serving. So we had Ms. Yeager, and she was not as old as the previous pilots we covered. Of course, Amelia Earhart, Bessie Coleman, Miss Quimby. She's more of a modern one, but we have even more modern pilots than her. Recently, Dr. E, we had a team of history-making female pilots.
Yes.
All African-American, the only African-American flight crew up to that point to fly commercially. What do you think about that?
I read that article and I was absolutely so excited. I remember when that happened, when the entire flight crew, pilots and the flight attendants were all Black. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And it made history because that's something that's never happened before. But the sad part is that for me, is that why should that be so uncommon? It should be something that should be as common as drinking water, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm so thrilled to know, do you remember the year of that, Queen V?
I believe that it happened very recently, like last year.
Yes. Right, yes, and so that's amazing. And so that sends a message to, you know, young people that, you know, you can do anything you set your mind to. You can be anything you want to be. Don't let nothing stop you. Don't let anything get in your way. Just keep going. And let me say this, because we're going to wrap this up. I had the nicest email from a student, and this is, I'm going to make a point here. A student said to me, he said, Dr. E, thank you for making this class with high standards, because it's the high standards that's going to get us our careers, that no one is going to hand us that promotion. No one is going to give us that job unless we meet the standards within the company. And I say that, I want to share that, is because it's like, that is so rare to hear a student saying high standards. But then he also said that if I don't perform well on the tests, that means I have to study harder. Now, I think about that email that I recently received just a few days ago, and I think about all those wonderful Black women that met those high standards, that did what they needed to do to fly that plane and to have their own crew and that looked like them, and nothing stopped them. Because I can only tell you is that it did not come easy for them. I know that they had to probably be 10 times better, greater, and everything else to be able to take that plane, that I don't know how many tons a plane weighs or whatever, but that airplane, and take it from point A to point B with an all Black crew, okay? So the only thing I can say in wrapping it up is that we have to maintain our standards. We have to think about those people that came before us, that we stand on their shoulders, and we cannot give up, we cannot quit, and we have to do, like you said in the relay analogy, and that is to have one hand going forward and then the other one back so that we can pass that baton to the next generation. So, Queen V, let's wrap this up.
Well, absolutely. This time has flown by so fast, but it has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, everyone, on our A2B broadcast. And you can find us at Quimby and DrE.com. We are also on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Instagram, Facebook, so many platforms. So please like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you so much, and we'll see everybody next time.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. We've got audacity to believe.